Welcome back to VRF Tech Talk. Donald Felice here again, joined by Roman Paul. Today we're going to talk about something that kind of plagues the newer technicians in the field when they're walking into a lot of times a new startup or something that has been running for 5 years, and then all of a sudden we get these error codes. The infamous U4s and what they mean, and how do you go about fixing them or troubleshooting them so that you're not wasting your time running up and down the stairs looking for power here, looking for that there. The U4 code. So we'll talk a little bit about what it means, what to look for, and how to remedy them.
Yeah, U-Force is one of those things that you know, you're going to see it no matter what you do in your career. It's probably the first error code you actually see straight out of the box. Because what happens is you commission your system, you turn it on, and then from there, you go and you walk into it, and it's like, well, there's something wrong with the indoor units. Put it into test operation, and the first error code I get is U4.
Yeah. So I think a good place to start with troubleshooting U4 is to kind of understand the hierarchy of the control network itself. Now, again, we're speaking strictly with Daikin now, and it's going to be different per manufacturer, right? Because Daikin is really the only one that does it this specific way. Well, I guess not really only one, but me and Roman are familiar with it. The other manufacturers do it a little bit differently.
Yeah, so one of those things with U4s, it's a communication fault. And I would say it's probably the biggest blanket error code that exists in VRV systems or VRF systems as a whole. It's not just, the blanket that it says, hey, there's a communication fault. It's that U4s could literally mean anything is wrong in the system. It could be communication wiring between systems. It could be communication wiring between outdoor units and indoor units, an incorrect count, someone turned off an indoor unit. And that's U4 is universal for Daikin. But again, there's those communication codes out there for Mitsubishi, LG, Samsung, Hitachi, where, it is that blanket umbrella where it's like, hey, I have a comm fault. What's wrong? And it's like, well, it could be a number of things, right? We could have a bad transformer, missing a leg of high voltage. Just about anything under the sun. And that's why it stumps a lot of guys, stumps
Yeah.
a lot of guys in the field. So,
And there's one specific U4 that comes up a lot of the times when startup or commissioning hasn't been completed yet, and or install hasn't been finished yet, where we don't have thermostats on the walls. You get the infamous U405.
yes.
That's a very tricky one to troubleshoot, right? Because it's telling you there's a comm alarm, but realistically, what the machine is saying is, like, I don't have a control point. Right? I can't start my units because I'm not talking to anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And with those U4s too, there's different layers to it, right? Are we talking about a U4 at the startup of a system's life for the very first time? Are we talking about a U4 5 years down the road? Are we talking about a U4 after 15 years of operation? I mean, all of those error codes are different. And obviously, the further back in the generations you go, VRV3, VRV2, man, if you're out there troubleshooting VRV2, give me a call. That's a good time right there. But those systems, they don't have sub error codes. And so you're kind of handicapped by just saying, well, what the heck is wrong? Well, I have no
Right.
idea. Now we at least have subcodes, but you're also going to find some of those U4s aren't even in the manual for troubleshooting. And so where do you go? What do you do? And what do you look at?
Right. So I'm going to pull open a service manual just to kind of show what Roman is talking about. This is a service manual for one generation old VRV X series, and we can see that it is going to be very bland on what we have available to us. So let me share that screen here.
Go ahead, man.
How to? I'm still a computer. I'm a computer noob.
Listen, I'll tell you, U4 is one of those things where, like, I called tech support. Yes, I know I called tech support a long time ago, and it was one of those things where they're like, well, check this, check that. Do you have 16.5 volts DC on your F1, F2 ins? Okay. Do you have it on your outs? Have you counted your indoor units? And so one of these things that I want to touch on really quickly is when we talk about U4s, everybody instantly goes to the mode 1 to find how many indoor units it's counted. And people don't realize that when we talk about counting indoor units, that remember, it is just a snapshot of what it is seen at one time.
Right.
Actually counting indoor units does not mean that your system actively sees all of those indoor units. It's just saying that it counted them once upon a time, and the U4 might be because it doesn't see all 10 indoor units anymore. So everybody goes into that mode 1 where they're going to go count the indoor units, and they say, well, it says it sees 10 units, so I don't know why I still have a U4. And it's like, no, it counted 10 units maybe 15, 20 minutes ago. It may not see 10 units anymore. Hook up your service checker and see if it finds all of them, right? Or put it in a fan on mode and go inside and start looking at fan coils to see if the fan's running. And my favorite out of all of them, setting mode 221 refrigerant recovery mode, which is a force communication mode. When I say force communication mode, I mean that the outdoor unit is sending a signal on repeat to open expansion valves, lock thermostats, turn on your light on your BRC controller. Right?
Yep.
Setting mode 221, I have actually troubleshot comms, fixed wires in the field while it's in mode 221, and see a live response at the thermostat after fixing the comm wires, after power cycling the indoor, or even not even power cycling the indoor unit, just fixing the comm wires while it's still sending that 221 command signal to open and lock out, and see it actually resolve the U4 error code. And now it's communicating, and I can see a live result instead of going back to the outdoor unit and in that dreaded cycle of power off, hold reset, return, right? Back on, return, recount, 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 recount. 6 hours later, I've gotten nowhere. Put that thing in 221 and go inside and start checking your voltage, checking your comm wires, checking your indoor units. And when you fix it, it will actually reflect the change right then and there instead of having to do it recount. So, sorry, a little tangent
That's
about
also my favorite thing to do when I get the phone call of like, I've got a U4 and, I don't know where to start, is put it in recovery mode, put it in 221, and then walk the stats. The one that you can't control,
Yep.
or the one that you can control, excuse me, that's the one that is your issue, right? You shouldn't be able to do anything to that unit. You shouldn't be able to turn it on and off.
Yep.
But to that point, so here's what we're talking about. This U4 code, right? It says transmission error between indoor units and outdoor units, open phase and power supply wiring. Well, what does one of those have to do with the other? That's wild. Why would an open phase give me a communication error?
Those are all the same things, Donald. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. What can an open phase do for a communicating circuit? If we don't have the power to generate the communication, then we're not going to communicate, right?
Yes. No, well, then that's what it is. So you think about it, we're not using high voltage to communicate, but so we look at here, right? I have an A1P board here in front of me, right? This is from a VRV4 system, but you'll notice here, right here, where I'm pointing to, this is a communication transformer. It's actually a dual transformer. It generates 5 volts DC and also 16.5 volts DC for the actual communication signal. If I am missing a leg of high voltage down here on my plug that goes to the A1P board, I am not going to generate the voltage I need to carry my information on my comm wires, that carrier wave. All carrier waves are generated from the outdoor unit unless there's a centralized controller. Then the centralized controller takes over that 16.5 volts DC voltage and sends it inside to the rest of the building. So again, you lose a phase, and that phase is one of the phases that powers the communication transformer. And then, yes, of course, you're not going to have 16.5 because there's nothing to generate 16.5 there at the outdoor unit.
Right. But there should be other telltales that you're missing, line voltage. I think we touched on that in episode 2 of like, what should you do, right? Check power first, right? Make sure you got the power you're supposed to have at the components you're looking at to make sure that you're not missing the low hanging fruit there. But to that point, right, the communication signal, or Roman was talking about, that 16 volts DC, right? That's all based on what is connected, how long your wires are, right? So checking at the end of the string, you might find that it's 14.8. As long as it's a solid voltage and not dropping out and you don't have anything shorted, then yes, that voltage will have an inherent drop across that line. Now, when you start dipping underneath that 14 volts, then that's when you start having dropouts of the actual comm line voltage. That's when you're going to see U4s or intermittent UHs or machines dropping in and out. They'll show up as a blue triangle intermittently on your iTouch. But having a solid voltage is very important on that comm line. Taking your meter, putting it on DC, and reading that voltage.
Yeah. So I had a gentleman named Luke Reed who reached out to me recently out of Boston. And he was like, hey, man, I have communication problems on my system. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so he's telling me, and he's going on. And then he tells me the readings he has between F1, F2 on the outdoor unit with the centralized controller disconnected. And he was like, okay, and normal stuff, right? 14.7, maybe 15. It's a heavily loaded comm wire. It's old building. It's had a lot of problems. Got a lot of communication faults in and out, dipping in and out. He goes to the end of the communication chain. When I say end, he's going to the last point in that communication chain, furthest from the outdoor unit in that daisy chain, and reading voltage. And lo and behold, my surprise, he had 12.3 volts DC at the end of the comm line. 12.3, and it was still communicating. And I was like, man, the lowest I have ever seen in the field that actually works is about 14.1, 14.2, maybe even 14 volts DC at the end of the comm line. 12.3 means one of two things. Either, you have power issues within the building, your wiring is way too long, right? Because remember, longer the wire, the more resistance that's added to that wire. We get over a certain amount of length. And of course, no matter what voltage you send down it, it's going to drop enough to where you're not actually carrying those data packets anymore. I did a did a symposium presentation this year, the HVAC symposium. Huge shout out for HVAC school there. And I talked about communication and data packets, not just for Daikin, but for all communicating equipment and what we're doing. Those ones and zeros, that binary code that it's carrying on a carrier wave, that carrier wave is 16.5 volts DC. You add a bunch of resistance or long wire lengths to the system, and you're naturally going to drop that carrier wave. And when that carrier wave voltage drops down, well, of course, the data packets don't make it either. And the signals aren't as strong as they should be, and you lose data packets along the way. And then the U4 generates. Remember, these systems are communicating 7 times per data set. So what does that mean? That means that they're sending a signal to request for information. What is your cooling set point? What is your temperature thermistor? 7 times in a row. And if it doesn't get a response back, it generates a U4 over 5 minutes, right? These are things that we know, not maybe just from the service manual. Maybe that's just me insider knowledge from knowing Daikin equipment, but that's how the system operates. That's what the system actually looks at with a U4. And so a lot of these things go into play where it's like, I don't know where to start. We'll start by measuring voltage, pull your centralized controller off, right? Let's start where we know that the outdoor board is generating the 16.5 volts DC signal. Pull all wires off. I don't care. Make sure you have 16.5 with nothing connected.
Yeah.
And then land your in wires, right? And see what the voltage does. Does it drop all the way down to 12? Well, then you might have a short in the circuit, high resistance short in the circuit, or your wire length's really crazy long. Then land your wires back again to the outdoor unit, go to the first box, BS box, or the first indoor unit, and just have it one-to-one connection and see what the voltage looks like now. Can I communicate? Does it respond in 221? And if it does, then you just keep removing and adding systems until you get to the end and you find your problem child that crashes the entire comm network.
So I think that brings up a good topic that, 10 years in the field and 10 years in my marketplace, and we still run into it more frequent than I think we should, is the type of wire that this communication is working on.
Yes.
Daikin is very specific on their wire, and it's often done incorrectly. So Daikin really wants you to use a 16 to 18 gauge stranded, non-shielded wire. And when I say stranded, that means that there's multiple pieces of small copper inside of one piece of PVC jacket. It's very important, right? The reason why we don't want to use solid core stat wire, like you can pick up from Home Depot, it comes on a spool, it's brown, it's got 8 conductors inside of it. The single conductor wire does not transfer enough data packets for this communication signal to be as robust as it needs to be to travel, right, the 3,200 possible feet that we're allowed. The reason being is it's a really crappy picture, but I'll bring it into the fold here. The data packets on a communication wire ride on the outside of the wire, meaning they're on the surface of the wire, just like you would have like surface tension for water in a cup and it doesn't spill over. It's very important to have surface area for the wire. So if we're saying that this is a solid core piece of wire and this is a solid core piece of wire, you can see that all of the data packets represented by these tiny little circles are traveling on the outside of the wire. Now, this is a really bad drawing, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we can double that. We'll have 10 total data packets. Now, say that you take this giant piece of wire, this single core, and you shrink it down, and each one of those now has 10 pieces around it. Now you have 10 small pieces of wire inside of a larger piece of wire, right? You've quadrupled or you doubled or you tripled, whatever you've done, your amount of information that you're transferring over that wire has grown exponentially because you're using the correct type of wire. So you're going to have a better chance of not having communication issues using the correct wire.
No, it's good. And what I'll do here is I'll steal the show here, and actually share my
drawing somewhere, but I don't know where it's at.
And this one here, right? So this is from my presentation from the symposium, right? And so these are all the carrier waves that are being sent from the indoor unit to the outdoor unit, and also amongst the controllers themselves to the indoor units. And these are the carriers. So Daikin 16.5 volts, right? Daikin VRV, Train Hyperion 5 volts DC, Lennox 2.5, Carrier 5 volts, Mitsubishi 29, and then your ComfortNet, which is mixture between Honeywell and Daikin there, 2.8. These are all just carrier waves, but what matters is on the carrier waves is the data packets that are being sent. What do they actually look like, right? And they look like this, right? It's these ones and zeros, these ups and downs in between microseconds, milliseconds actually, that are being transmitted to the indoor unit and the outdoor unit. Now, we won't get into transient voltage and all that other crazy stuff because I feel like it's a little too deep, but it's important to know when you're talking about troubleshooting communication wires, the best thing to do is go to the right. First of all, remove the centralized controller, verify your board is creating the carrier wave with nothing attached, land your wire. Does the carrier wave go away? If it doesn't go away, okay, let's move further in the building. Cut the comm line in half. If I know I have 10 boxes, BS boxes in the comm loop, I'm going to go to box number 5 and I'm going to disconnect the last 5 and keep the first 5. If the system starts to communicate and they all go into setting mode 221 refrigerant recovery mode and lock the stats, then I know that it's in my last 5 boxes and not my first 5. Now I'll add either 2 boxes back, or maybe I'll go 1 box at a time until it crashes the comm network and the U4 comes back. Then I know, well, when I added this, it could have been any of these downstream or this particular box. Let me investigate further, okay? That's how we do this. We dissect, we cut right in the middle, cut further on, and we go from there. And that's essentially what we're talking about here.
But Rome, does that mean I have to go out and buy a super fancy oscilloscope to be able to troubleshoot comm signals?
Yes, and you should also put it on your expense card because your employer will really like that. Offer coupon code Roman told me to do it. No, no, you don't need a fancy oscilloscope, guys. I rocked the what was it? Is the brand name escapes me now? What's the one that I had forever? Handtech. I had a Handtech oscilloscope that plugged into my laptop that cost me $55 from Amazon, and it let me see these. And now they weren't very accurate. Okay, let's just talk about that really quickly. Okay. If you go and you buy a $55 oscilloscope and you try to go conquer the world and understand and diagnose communication signals from VRF brands, you're missing the boat here because you're not going to do it. And the reason you're not going to do it is because it doesn't show you the accuracy that you need to see the issues on a comm line. It's going to be way too granular and grainy. It's like taking a Blu-ray player that plays 4K DVDs, right, or 6K, whatever it is we are now, right? And then plugging it into my 1980s television that does one color and trying to play it on it. It's not gonna work. You can't see anything, right? It's gonna be all grainy and not even gonna work. It's the same thing, right? So you can't expect to go out there with a $55 oscilloscope and troubleshoot everything. Now it will show you the basic data packets to see if you're even getting them at that point, but to that point, that's only good for so far, right? The cost of the oscilloscope will determine the accuracy in what you're actually seeing on the carrier waves and signals.
I happen to have toys, okay? So I'm not really razzing, but I gave somebody some guff about
Are we
an
showing off
oscilloscope they bought. So because I'm a nerd, I like to test things. So I bought this Fni Rusai super cheap oscilloscope.
How much did you pay? Tell us how much you pay.
It was like $80, right? Like costs almost nothing.
Nothing.
Well, I can't say nothing. $80 is a decent amount of money, but it's very cheap, and there's a reason it's very cheap. It doesn't work that great. So,
no.
I might
basic waves, basic signals.
Yeah.
It might let you see a few data packets flying by at light speed on the system.
Yeah.
Right, light speed. Okay, but it's not this. Right, this is a Hioki MR8870-20. Now, this oscilloscope may be very small, but she is very high powered. This oscilloscope alone is about $3,500. And so, again, some tools are great, and I would love for everybody to go out and buy a $3,500 oscilloscope. However, it's not required to do communication troubleshooting. There you go, right there. He's got a Fluke, right? That right there.
I'm a yellow fanboy. Sorry.
That right there is a car. That is a car. That's probably what I paid for my last car. Sitting on his desk.
Yeah.
But again, you can find these off eBay, whatever, but you don't need them to troubleshoot. It may be a crutch. If you want to understand communication signals and you have those communication problems where like everybody's looked at it from the factory and nobody can tell you what's going on, and you want to go deeper with the oscilloscope because of transient voltage or weird crap going on. And let's say all your comm voltage is correct, everything's communicating, but then you get random indoor units changing temperature and shutting on and off and doing weird stuff. Then sure, an oscilloscope would be the next step for something like that. But it's not required to troubleshoot communication. It's just an added bonus to be able to look at those things to then correlate the two of, hey, this might be a problem, or hey, this may not be a problem. But that's comm lines, that's comm wire. It's just one of those things. So I have another.
Don't rush out and buy oscilloscopes, but if you do, just make sure you're buying a quality product. There's plenty of them out there. If you need recommendations, please hit one of us up, and we'll give you a recommendation on something that will serve you well in the field.
Yeah, no, I've got like 6 oscilloscopes, and only one of them is my favorite. And I even have the Pocket meter, right, that does oscilloscope features, and it's cool, right? And I can see data packets, but the problem with seeing the data packets, I know they exist. However, I can't see the front peak of the wave and the back peak of the wave, right? So there's when we talk about oscilloscopes and measuring frequencies and data packets, there's this part that we can't see that is actually really important, and that's those peaks and crests and waves, and when it goes up and then where it comes back down again. Those things are extremely important to measure, and you can't do that with an inexpensive oscilloscope. Unfortunately, I tried the Pocket meter. I think it's like $250.
Yeah.
And I had high expectations. A lot of people said it was great. They said I need to get it. It's the bee's knees. I don't know if people say that still, but I still rock it. So whatever. But it's one of those things where it's like you're not going to see the small, teeny tiny things that are going on that actually corrupt communication. And actually show you what this looks like really quick. Here we go. And ta-da.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can draw out a reference signal, right? So we're looking at that carrier signal there, that 16-volt DC, right? We're seeing nice clean lines. We start seeing the ripples where we're gonna start having interference with voltage drop or
Yes.
induced voltages or dirty networks, too much wire, shielded wire. Right. Now we're starting to see some ripples where we're having an issue, right? We have a peak that then drops down, and then we're having what looks like a nice smooth transition, but in the communication game, a transition like that can lead to issues.
Yeah.
Right? And then we're falling off kind of flat down, and we're peaking lower than our lowest voltage should be down on our negative side. And it's just going to repeat that itself. Over time, whatever is causing that distortion on the waveform is only going to get worse, whether that's corrosion on the wire. If you've, I wish I had the picture on my computer, but, an outdoor J box installed upside down, swimming in water, right? Eventually that water is going to eat away that cable and it's going to cause corrosion. Corrosion makes resistance. Resistance adds voltage drop, right? And that eventually will kill the comm.
Yeah, no. And again, like this is the beginning. You'll notice it's square waves, right? And so with a basic oscilloscope, you could see the square waves. But then, and these are plus or minus 5 volts DC pulse signals, right? So that middle line is the 16.5 volt DC threshold. And then over time, right, you can see how they're no longer square. And when they don't become square anymore, what happens is the indoor unit gets the information of ones and zeros and it goes, I have no idea what the heck this is and what I'm looking at, right?
Yeah.
I didn't get so instead of getting 1001100, it's missing a zero somewhere in there, and it's like I don't know what the heck you're trying to say to me. Like I don't understand any of what you're saying. You're speaking Chinese to me. Like I had no idea. And so what does it do? It throws a U4, man.
Yep. I think that representation of the bridge with the trucks colliding, right? That's a good representation of what's happening. Is you've got potholes that represent issues with the communication network, whether that's resistance or wiring issues or wiring touching, grounding out, right? You have something that's causing traffic to have to slow down in that spot.
Yeah, and you lose data packets, right? They just don't make it through. They literally
Right.
hit a brick wall or fall through the bridge of corrosion that I have here for my animation, to show you that like, hey, if you have these issues, and this is okay. So this brings up the next subject that a really sore subject for myself. U4 communication issues and wire nuts, right? Why can't you wire nut comm wires? I do it all the time, and I've never had a problem. I put VRF systems in a house, and we went all 18.8 thermostat wire because that's what I have, and no one told me otherwise. The Daikin guy said I could do it, so I did it. And now I've got communication issues. I've got U4s. I got random communication errors all throughout my system.
What about like butt connectors like these ones? Like why
It's
can't you use splice connectors?
solderless heat shrink connectors, right? You take a heat gun, you apply the heat gun to that connector there. It melts the solder in the center, and it also makes it liquid and watertight to where you're not going to get moisture in that connection anymore. The only way that you should splice communication wires is with soldered connections.
But why can't I just use a regular butt connector?
Well, because when you, again, butt connector, sure. Does your butt connector even have what's the one you have right now? Because there was a butt connector that I used back in the day.
Oh, it just crimps on both sides, right? You just crimp it together.
Oh boy,
Why not?
You have resistance. You got added resistance in that connection. It's exposed to the environment. You get moisture in there. Electrolysis takes place. It builds up actual. I mean, when's the last time you checked it? Took a look at the Statue of Liberty, right? When it was built, it's made of copper, right? I'm pretty sure it looked like copper when it was built, right? And now look at it. It's a giant green statue. The same thing happens inside of butt connectors when we take copper conductors, we connect them together, we've sent an electrical signal or current through it, carrying communication data packets. What happens? The corrosion builds up over time. It's the same thing that happens to your car battery in your car with DC voltage, right? All that
Right.
corrosion that builds up on the positive terminal over time to where, you don't have that connection anymore. And now you got to go and pull off the cable, pour soda on it, brush it off, put the cable back on, and then you can start your car. It's not that the battery's dead. It's not getting across anymore, right?
Right. So, but it goes back to again with the how the communication signal works on a stranded wire is anytime you're cutting the wire, right? You're cutting the vein, right? You're not allowing things to travel freely and completely through that. When you have a wire nut or something that's not continuing that piece of wire, and I will even argue that solder is really not a good solution because it really does take it to one piece of wire, but it is the safest solution for joining two pieces of communication wire for the pure fact that it is one piece of wire now instead of two pieces inside of a wire nut that's going to fall off and get lost and corrode out. And but it comes back to that same reason: is anything that's adding resistance to the circuit, we don't think of a wire nut as adding resistance, but this will add a minute amount of resistance that will wreak havoc on a communication signal.
Yeah, because you have to remember when you put those two pieces of wire together, even if you twist them together, like my fingers are right here on the screen, you still can't get them right up against each other in all spots. And so what's happening here, right? Voltage may be jumping between the wires, they may be arcing across the wires, which adds resistance, or even then, the wire itself is going to slowly create that electrolysis between the two, where it builds up that corrosion on the wire. And eventually it does get thick enough with the corrosion, especially here in the Florida humid climate, where it rots out, right? Or you lose communication signal. And I think good friend of mine, Eric Kaiser, went to Bill Spone's house, one of the owners of True Tech Tools, and was troubleshooting a Gree mini split that uses 24-volt signal to turn the unit on and off. And one of them is a communication wire. And sure enough, he had wire nuts on his comm wires as they transitioned into the building. And he was like, and this was high voltage wire. So like we're talking mini splits, right? So this is 3-wire, right? Two wires are high voltage. One wire is actually that modulating communication voltage, that third leg. And the wire nuts had a ton of corrosion on them. And he went in there and he actually soldered the connections together, and he showed it on his pocket meter that, hey, here's the data packets before, here's the data packets after. Now, it wasn't very granular, but you could at least see the improvement on the square waves. And again, his communication random faults went away. Just magic like that. Like
Yeah.
they weren't even correlated to each other.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things, right? Communication errors, where do you start? What do you look at? Knowing where the signal is being generated, knowing what affects the signal, knowing how to break down the comm line to know where to go. And again, we say pull the centralized controller because not a lot of people realize that when you add a centralized controller to a network, it becomes the main source of communication for the entire building. For all the VRF systems attached to that centralized controller on that comm line.
Yep. I think I want to ask a question and see what kind of answer I get here. Is
Oh
how
boy.
often should you replace a board?
Never. Not unless you troubleshoot it. It's a sore subject of mine. Now, so listen,
Troubleshoot it. What? But the call center told me that I needed a new A1P board.
I'm going to scream at this microphone really quick. No, so, we get in this habit and have been in this habit for a long time as an industry where the more complex the equipment gets, the more reliant on tech support and also the service manuals we become. And that was a good thing because we were learning the equipment. We've gotten to the point now where we understand the most basic components in these boards and how they operate and what they do, to the point now where if the troubleshooting tree ends at the board being bad, there's actually a few other things you can actually check. I mean, I made an A1P troubleshooting guide just to start using that to keep people from replacing the number one component that everybody thinks is bad. And that's this right here, right? This A1P board, it is not bad. Most likely it's not. Maybe a fuse is blown. Maybe you've got wires hooked up incorrectly. Maybe you've got high resistance on the wires. It's one of those things where you have to break it down to the source, and it all comes down to voltage, right? Do I have my incoming power? Do I have my voltage coming out of my transformer? Because if you don't, you could have a bad transformer. Sure, that's bad, right? That's a bad board. But having that at the end of the troubleshooting tree just tells us that, hey, I've done everything. So let me just jump to the end and get a new board, right? I'm not going to go through the 15 checks that it wants me to pull. It wants me to cut how many zip ties? 73 zip ties and pull off a bunch of plugs and turn it off and turn it on. And let me stand on my head and then turn around 2 times and look at the orientation of the moon. I'm just going to order a new board. I don't have time for all this crap.
Yeah, I don't have time for it.
And guess what happens? When they turn it on with the new board, they get a U4.
They
Well,
got
it
the
didn't
same
go
problem.
away.
Now you're waiting for the call center to call you back. You got an upset customer because they still don't have an air conditioner and you're still in the same spot. Where if you just took that extra 25, 30 minutes to go through and check what you need to check, you would have probably fixed it day one.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where it's like, okay, we could say all these excuses. Well, tech support told me to do this, and it's like you got to remember that I love tech support nonetheless. I have nothing terribly bad to say about them. It's getting better every day. But the thing is you have to remember that what is their motivation for telling you to change the board, and that may be just to close the call out altogether to where their ticket should not be open for more than a day. They've been told don't have your tickets open more than a day. And so what are they going to do? They're going to go through and they're going to say, hey, just change the A1P board because, out of the 10 guys that I've talked to in my 1 year career here at the manufacturer, that's probably going to fix your problem.
Right.
And if it doesn't, then it's like, well, have you tried changing every other board in the unit? Because that might be the next step.
Right? You gotta love that, right? We make the joke about on all the forums and all the Facebook groups, it's like load the parts cannon, but realistically, like don't be that guy. Don't load the parts cannon.
Don't do it.
Take your time and troubleshooting. Like if not for nothing else, like your time is worth more than a board, and your customer's money is worth more than that board. So make sure that you're using your customer's money wisely when you're out troubleshooting issues.
Yes. No, and so this is the guide. So if you haven't seen the guide yet, here's the guide. It points out the major components, where the plugs are, where the communication isolation relays. That's right. If you short out the comm wires, the unit will actually protect the board from actually shorting out the A1P board. And so if you don't have 16.5 volts DC, you pull your wire and you check it again and you have 16.5 volts DC, it's that those relays in the bottom side here actually open up to protect the board from actually blowing out the transformer on the board because of a short. You got low voltage fuses, high voltage fuses. Again, if you haven't seen this guide, reach out to us. It's on our Facebook page. I have it. Donald has it. Everybody has it. It's a step-by-step guide on how to troubleshoot communication issues, how to troubleshoot the fuses on the A1P board, where to check voltage, where to confirm that your transformer is doing exactly what it's supposed to. Like, we have resources. And again, I made this from scratch. And that's just from my years of service out in the field because I got so tired of changing A1P boards because someone told me to, and it didn't fix anything. This is the guide to actually condemning boards. So if you're not using it, you should start using it because now you know about it and you can't claim that you don't.
Yeah, for sure. Just take your time. Do your research. Ask for help. Don't rely on somebody telling you to change a board. Anytime somebody tells you to change a board, you should take that with a grain of salt if you haven't done any troubleshooting.
Why? Yeah, why change the board? What do I need to do to make sure this board is bad? Well, you went through the flow diagram, right? And it's like, okay, but why? Why? Unless you can tell me, well, when you put your leads here to here and you get 1.6 volts, that means it's bad. It should be 5 volts. Sure, that's a bad board, right? But if you're just telling me to change it because you've done everything else and it's the last thing to do, you're going to be sadly mistaken to find out that it doesn't really actually fix your issue. And I think you and I talked about this too before, and we don't have enough time to cover it here, but LC error codes, right? The infamous LCs, they stand for lost cause. It's a lost cause. Why troubleshoot it? Japan will even tell you, you can't troubleshoot it, right? Just change all the boards in the outdoor unit and you're good to go. But there is actual things you can do. And 9 times out of 10, the guys that I find that are finding LCs and fighting LCs on VRV3, on VRV4, on VRVX, it's because somebody came before them, and we talked about this in another episode, and they changed out a board, and they either put the wire in the wrong spot, or they didn't wire it incorrectly, and it's missing a plug altogether. People forget that, like, when we look at A1P boards, and all of these plugs that we have, so many plugs, you have to remember this is a universal board. And just because there's a plug on this board does not mean that it gets a wire or a wire from that size harness. Now, they did a good job on color coding them and changing different sizes, but you're going to find that some of the smaller modules or even some of the weird modules, they have spots for the same wire plug that can go in the wrong place. And that's usually what happens too on inverter boards when we're talking about LCs. It's the comm wire going in the wrong place to the wrong place, between the two boards. And then that's your comm loss, right? Because it doesn't go there. Why doesn't it go there? There's a plug for it. Yeah, but if you look at the wiring diagram, there isn't any X15A. And the reason there isn't any X15A is because the unit doesn't use that plug, right?
Right.
It's not in the wiring diagram.
Quick diversion. Hold up your A1P board again. The high pressure and low pressure switches use the same color plug. They're up in the top left hand corner. No, those are the sensors.
Here we go.
Yeah, those two. Those two red ones.
Yes.
They're the same plug, same color. Don't put them in the wrong spot.
Well, see, it's again, and they are the same size plug and they're the same size orientation, right? And even the one next to it, the gray one, if you're not really paying attention and you're just slapping and going, and you don't have another module of the same tonnage to see what it looks like before, use the wiring diagram, right? There's a wiring diagram on the panel. There's a wiring diagram in the service manual. They're there for a reason. If your plug does not exist in the wiring diagram, it does not get used. It does not get used, right? So if you and the same thing with expansion valves, right? When we talk about the ones that are up here in the top corner of the A1P board, right? Not all units have multiple expansion valves. Some of them just use one or they use two, and that's older VRV equipment, not newer like heat pumps and stuff like that. If you plug the EEV in the wrong spot where it's not supposed to go when you change out a board, you're going to get an EEV fault code because it looks for 150 ohms between one of the legs and common. And if it doesn't see that ohm resistance on the board, then it says, my expansion valve has failed. Let me throw an error code, right? And that doesn't mean that you have a failed expansion valve. It means you probably plugged it in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
And that's a big common one I see too, right? Especially on a heat pump where it's only one expansion valve. It's not an upper and lower coil plus the lower heat exchanger for the liquid loop, right?
Yep. So I think reading the service manual is key, but let's go back to it and let's see the one time it mentions to replace the A1P.
The one time.
All right, right here, after it tells you, does the microcomputer normal monitor indicating lamp HAP, okay, the HAP light, the happy light,
HAP right here.
All right. If it's not blinking, what's it telling you to do next? Check your voltage. Do you got power? If you do, and the fuse is good, right? You make it through that the fuse is good, then you get to replace the board. But if you're making it to this point, you've got power on the board and the fuse is good. I'm gonna tell you, there's probably a 97% chance that A1P is not the problem.
Yes.
You probably have something downstream of the unit, incorrectly wired, shorted to ground, wrong terminal. Which it brings up a good point, right? With our new Amirion units, the Daikin VRV has changed its terminal designations from what it used to be, F1, F2, in and out, and Q1, Q2. Now, if we look at the wiring diagram on the outdoor unit, we have X0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's not confusing.
Right. Let's change the wiring that we've had for the past 25 years to something completely different.
Well, it's not new unless we change the letters and the numbers. Come on.
Yeah, sure. But just be mindful of that, right? And one of the biggest things that got me early in my career with this Daikin product is how the terminal strips work. I wish I had one to show, but how the terminal strips on the indoor units work. There's a panel that slides up and down for factory side of the wiring and and field side of the wiring. They always come shifted in the down position. So somebody goes in there to go land a wire and they're unscrewing the factory side. They go to stuff their wire in, it doesn't fit. So they, I got to flip this up, but they never tighten back down that other terminal.
Yeah.
And now we have a loose comm wire, right? So just be mindful of that kind of stuff. You'll see that on startup. If you're not the person landing the control wire, if you have a low voltage sub doing the control wiring, be mindful of that when you get UAs and U4s popping up there in startup.
Yeah, because it's one of those things, like Donald said, where all the wires come into the top of the terminal block, and if you don't actually, slide up that piece of plastic to get to the screws at the bottom, then you're not actually tightening up the connection, and so it's a loose connection. And so what do? We say that when you land comm wires, you're supposed to do what? Do the old tug test, right? Tug on that wire, and if it comes out, it's not a solid connection, and you're going to have comm issues. right? And I'm not saying get up there and do some pull-ups, one arm pull-ups, because I know you guys are strong. I'm saying just give it a good tug. Because if it comes out or it frays out and you only have one strand left in there, that is going to be really poor communication. And again, above a hard ceiling, above a hard lid, tucked away in the corner, like these things aren't easy to get to. So if you're going to go in and do the job right. And again, to that point too, what Donald's saying, I've even seen where the screw terminals from the factory on the top side have been loose and the wires have been loose. So again, you can't rule anything out. It's always nice to take a screwdriver to it or give it a tug also and say, hey, is this loose? No, it's probably not. And again, these are those ones where it's like I've checked everything and I still can't find the problem. And it's like, well, go tug on those wires, man.
Check your wiring. I mean, that's like somebody that calls me about comm issues. It's like the first thing, and I hate saying it, but go check your wiring. Is your wiring good? Well, what's good?
Good.
Well, is it clean, tight, and organized? Like, is it good wiring? Oh, we have a 18-foot service loop, and we're in a 3-conductor wire. It looks like they used red and black, and then over here they use red and white. I'm like, well, that's not good wiring.
It's not? Are you sure?
No.
Can't we just get a warranty new unit? I mean, that's what I would like to do.
Yeah, can we get boards and warranties and yeah.
Well, you got to remember too, right? So we think about these wires and where they're landed and how they're daisy chained together and how they all communicate. It's a very intricate system. And if you go through there and start changing wire colors and stuff like that along the way, it becomes a big problem.
Yeah, for sure.
A huge problem.
So use 2-conductor so you don't have that issue.
Yeah. No, and so U4s, other comm issues, counting indoor units, communicating to indoor units, centralized controllers, duplicate addresses. I mean, those are all things that are easily managed with a step-by-step process. Don't get overwhelmed. Always go to high voltage first. Check your incoming power. Check your imbalance between the two. I had a good one the other day. VRV-X outdoor module RAYQ 144 heat recovery, 2 modules twinned together, and on this beautiful luxurious hotel here in Orlando. And the master module was running and the sub module wasn't. And they said, well, we locked that unit out and it's not running. And I'm like, well, no, it doesn't have any power. And they're like, yeah, it does. And so I check it. I'm like, okay, it does have high voltage coming into the unit. It's 460 volt. But there's no power coming into the A1P board. There's no display. And they're like, yeah, it's not supposed to have a display. And I'm like, it's supposed to have a display when you push the buttons, right? There's no HAP light. And also it's supposed to respond to commands. And I'm like, well, let's check the voltage. So we checked the voltage and we found that one of the legs of high voltage, instead of being at that 120 volts, it was at 87 volts. And it was the leg of high voltage that powers the communication transformer. And so this module has been running with another module basically off. If the A1P board has no power and it's not communicating, the brain is dead. It's dead. A vegetable. Yeah. Pull the plug. It's a dead unit. And so come to find out, there was where the high voltage comes out of so your 3-phase comes in, goes down to the transformer. The transformer then feeds back up into the module because it's 460. It steps it down to 240. And then that 120 comes across over through the boards, and there was a loose plug. It was a Molex plug. Actually, the wire for that A1P board came out of the backside of the Molex plug to where it was barely connected, and it was dropping voltage just enough to where the A1P board wasn't communicating. Killed the power, snapped the connectors back together, fired right up, no problems. And it could have been because of someone in there changing inverter boards, tugging on those wires. You got to remember when you're in there doing work and changing other boards that when you just lay the inverter cabinet down and let the wiring harnesses hold it in, that it causes stressors on other cables and can cause communication issues like that. And that was the first time I've ever seen that. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's probably never realized that I'd ever had that unit, right? Because typically you'd see a U7 if you dropped your sub. So how long has that thing been running with one module?
3 years, and it killed the compressor.
That is wild. That's a good one. I would expect the compressor to be dead within a month on that kind of issue.
But they just kept swearing to me that it wasn't supposed to have a display because it's the sub module. And I'm like, no, it's supposed to have this green light flashing. And when you push the buttons, it's still supposed to respond with flashing light.
Gotta give us something.
Like, it had high voltage, no display. She's mint, man. And yeah, so just it's good times, man. See small things. It's like when and here's the thing: my guy's hooked up to it, and they're like, I got 2 modules. but the other one's not pulling in a service checker. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not pulling in a service checker? And it's like, it's not pulling in a service checker. And I'm like, well, then it doesn't have power. No, it does have power. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. And they're like, yeah, it does. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. And then they go up to the A1P board and they're like, oh, yeah, no, it doesn't have power up there. And I'm like, well, yeah, because it's not responding to service checker. It's brain dead. If you're supposed to have 2 outdoor units, you pull up service checker, you should have 2 outdoor units.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a good one. Lots of fun on that one. Comm issues are never dull.
You want to talk about any of the UAs? Because it kind of goes hand in hand with U4 and UA.
Go ahead, yeah.
So UA53 is the common code that you'll see at startup when you don't set your dip switches on your branch selector. Now, the other common time you'll see a UA is if somebody turns power off to a unit while it's running. So the branch selector is saying, hey, I was talking to something at some point. I do have wires connected to me, but I don't have anything receiving on the other side of that. And you'll get a UA53 or UA52 telling you that, hey, something changed here.
Yeah.
So UA53, just be careful with that one on startup. It's most likely your dip switches are set incorrectly on your boxes.
Well, and so let's go even further into that, because remember, when your system first turns on, when I say turns on, doesn't actually run. When you establish a solid power connection to the outdoor unit and it goes into its first initialization mode, this is where the lights start flashing and it starts counting indoor units. It gives every indoor unit and BS box a specific address for that system. If you go and change dip switches, or you forget to change dip switches to disable a port after it goes to count something, and then you make the change really quick and you just power cycle it, right? Because the power cycle fixes everything. And then you get the error code back again. You have to remember that you have to force the outdoor unit to do a recount. And it's not just a recount, it's what we call a readdress. And the same thing has to happen when you mix up the wires on the indoor units for cross ports. When you've got an indoor unit wired to the wrong port, you have to then go back and force a recount on those units to give it a brand new address associated with that port on that box. Because if you don't, you're either going to get another UA53, which that one is a nightmare to troubleshoot sometimes. I've got a story about that. But the cross wire, they go and they fix the wire and they go, well, it's still sending the refrigerant to the wrong port. And it's like, well, yeah, did you do a recount? Readdress?
Yeah.
Well, I turned the power off.
It's pretty cool that these boxes and these machines are smart enough to know that, hey, you changed the wire, it's still talking to that wrong unit.
Yeah.
So it still knows that this unit was on this port, now it's on this port.
You're not going to get me like
right?
that. Yeah. No, I saw you moved it, but I know where he's at. He's right here. He still has this address.
So reinitializing or readdressing at the outdoor unit it can get you through some troubleshooting issues too. So I'm gonna jump in with my story.
Go ahead.
We use that kind of purpose built when we're troubleshooting comm issues, right? Say somebody walks up to the iTouch and I got all the blue triangles and I don't know where to start. I got 40 units. I don't know where to start. Reinitialize the outdoor unit, right? Make it go count what it's connected to. As soon as it knows what it's connected to, and you have units that are turned off in the guest rooms or the suites or hotels. This is the most common. Hotels and multifamily. Somebody turns their unit off because they're saving power, right? But that killed the whole comm network. Reinitialize. Find that room. You just took 2 days worth of troubleshooting into 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yep. So my horror story was this VRVX triple module system. I don't know what is up with X's and my problems, but they're real. And so system's been running for 5 years, and the unit let the smoke out of the A1P board. When I say let the smoke out, there's a bunch of capacitors here at the bottom next to the communication terminals. And so this one that I'm pointing to right above these orange relays, if you send 240 volts AC down your F1, F2 wires, this capacitor will actually explode and let the smoke out. It's a nice little firework, actually. It's like a little smoke bomb. And so what happened? Compressor was grounded. Another technician troubleshot it. Went to go replace the compressor. The inverter board was not changed because it was ruled not faulty. Well, turn the power back on. And what was happening was the inverter board was, because of how severe the ground was on the compressor, the inverter board was actually sending one leg of high voltage, 240 volts AC, down the communication wire that's connected in series with not only the fan driver boards, but all of the inverter boards and the A1P board. And so what did it do? Sending that COM communication down the A1P board, made it down to the F1, F2 terminals through the board, through the low pressure sensor, through the high pressure sensor, through everything. EEVs had 240 volts. Down the F1, F2 circuit, down through all the BS boxes, all the fan coils, and back again. And what did it do? It burned out every A1P board and the BS box at the end of the communication chain and just completely smoked every board. And it was wild to see. And that one was a UA53, and it just kept UA53, UA53, UA53. That's after I figured out that the board exploded and found that, hey, there's 240 volts on the comm line, right? Everything disconnected. Power up, 240 volts. Holy crap. What's up with that? So then I went back, I pulled all my comm wires off my inverter boards, off my fan driver board, and also off my A1P board, turned the power back on. I went from comm terminal to comm terminal between the inverter communication loop on the A1P board and found one inverter board sending 240 volts off the comm wire connection that's supposed to be 12 volts VDC. And so that board get changed. And then from there, it was just troubleshooting board after board after board, just finding one after another. And it took about a good 3-4 days to work through that entire system to get everything back up and running again. But it just, again, something you wouldn't think would happen, happened, right? And it blew the entire comm circuit at the end. I think it's killed somewhere close to 17 boards total. It's like a 12-port box. So
that's the call center's best dream, man. All them A1Ps.
Yeah, I know. I called everybody, and I was like, "What's it supposed to be?" And so that brings up my next topic. What's Q1, Q2 supposed to be?
Q1, Q2.
Regardless of what the factory says, because they're wrong.
Well, depends on where you're checking it, but I haven't checked a Q1, Q2 in a long time, so
okay, I can tell you.
I believe it was like 5 volts, something around 5 volt.
So it's 0.500 VDC. So it's 500. So it's 0.5 volts DC.
Yeah,
right?
half volt.
There you go. It's a half a volt of DC between the modules. And so what is it doing? It's doing plus or minus 5 volts communication between the two modules on Q1, Q2 off of that carrier wave that is only 0.5 volts DC. And why is that important to notate? Because it's not a fresh 16.5 volts DC between modules, but it is a constant signal. There is a constant signal being sent on Q1, Q2 between modules. What does that mean? That means that if you have a fault code where modules are not communicating between each other, you should check to see if you have your 0.5 volts VDC between both modules, and then know that as soon as you fix or run a temporary wire between the modules on Q1, Q2, thank you, but once you land a fresh wire between Q1 and Q2, if that is the problem, it will fix itself literally in 2 seconds. 2 seconds is all it takes to communicate between modules for that error code to clear. And I've tested this in the field many, many times. I've got Q1, Q2 on an oscilloscope many times, and it's a lot of fun to look at. But those units are always looking for each other on that comm line between modules, but it is not supposed to be 16.5 volts DC. I don't care who told you that, they're wrong. It's just a micro voltage communication for a short amount of wire between modules. These modules aren't 25 feet apart. They're 5 feet, they're 2 feet, they're 3 feet apart. And so it's not needed to have that strong, robust communication signal between the modules. But just know it's also not something you have to do a recount on. Once you establish communication, it should respond like that. And then you should be able to do 221 and listen to the solenoid valves click in the other module that it is actually communicating between the two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for wait and see, but when I turn on a multi-module system, I like to see the blinky lights. I like to see the zeros blinking and then go solid, and the sub unit is probably 10x faster than the master when it comes to reinitializing. It'll go blank way faster than the master unit, but that's also telling you that it found something that it wants to communicate to, and it no longer needs to do anything.
Yeah, and also to that point, when we power up these units and your outdoor units don't see each other right away, when they do eventually find each other, you might find yourself getting a communication fault, right? It's a U7, right, between modules where the address is incorrect, right? You got two master modules when it's supposed to be master and sub. And so, yeah, and so the process for that, setting mode 1, setting 0. So you don't have to click anything. You just literally click the mode button. You're already there. You hit return and you look at, is this a master module 0? Is it a sub module 1? Or is it a sub 2 module 2? And what number is displayed? Because if they both say 0 and they're connected together, only one can be a master, one can be a sub. And so you can go into setting mode 2. What setting is that, Donald? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't do that on three phase. I was saying I do it on single phase all the time.
Okay. So what's your go-to for three-phase?
I don't. I've never had to change a master on three phase. I just
Okay.
rewire it and reinitialize it. Sorry. Yeah.
Never have any problems with VRV. I'm just an expert at everything. So for us out in the real world, so we had this. I had this recently with a technician of mine, where he went out and he looked at a unit. It was a multi-module, 2 modules, right, master sub, and in that process, he said, "Okay, I'm getting a U7. It's not communicating. Put it in 221. It communicates. Okay." What's the actual address on it? When he goes in and he looks and he says, okay, well, this one's a master and this one's a master. And I'm like, well, they both can't be masters. One has to be master, one has to be sub. Reinitialize, recount, doesn't do it. Reinitialize, recount, doesn't do it. Okay, so you go to setting mode 2, and I believe it's 52, if I'm not mistaken.
Hold up here.
Okay, so, and you go to that setting and you manually set what is the master, what is the sub, what is the sub 2. And in that process, between all of those modules together, you'll get to the point where it's like, okay, I know what you're supposed to be. You can't figure this out. That's okay. I forgive you. Let me tell you what you are. You're the master, you're the sub, and you're the sub 2. And in that process of elimination, by manually assigning it, if it can't find itself, you're going to be able to rule out a lot of things to say, hey, this is the problem or this is not the problem. They are actually not communicating, and that the address error that you have is probably an issue with that particular A1P board in particular. So,
I don't think they publish that anymore.
yeah, so there's a lot of settings between VRV4 and the rest of all the other settings that are there that you won't find in the service manuals, and it is very frustrating. Unfortunately, thankfully, I have a lot of that stuff saved in secretive places. I actually sleep with a list of field settings under my pillow. So actually, I can share it really quick. It's not in there. 51.
It's not
It's
in a
50.
million.
It's 51. Wow. So here we go. We're gonna share top secret information with you today here on the VRF Tech Talk podcast.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Yeah, yeah, it's there. It's just it's not published in the. Well, maybe I just skipped over it. Yeah, 251 forced master, forced sub. Yeah.
There we go.
It's
Da-da-da-da.
weird.
Yeah, right there. Sequence multi-outdoor, sequence addressing between master and sub units, force master, forced sub 2, right? 251. So there are things that you can do to force them to communicate. And if they still don't, then that's when you can dive deeper and say, all right, I've done everything I can for this board. It is just stubborn as heck. It's time to change it.
Yeah.
And it fixed it, right? That was the solution, unfortunately, was changing out the A1P board. But yeah, so comm issues, they suck. We don't like them. Stop working on VRF because it also sucks. It doesn't get any easier. It's only getting more difficult. Guess just wait until we get into CO2 and
Dude,
R32.
I just saw an ad for Daikin has a CO2 inverter heat pump.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're getting into CO2, buddy. I'm
I
gonna
don't
get
want
the
that.
documents from that. I've been talking to my guys over at Daikin UK. And they're keeping very tight-lipped about the service manual and the information for their CO2 system, although they've already done the training for it. But when I get that compressor layout, I'm really excited to see what they're doing with CO2 because it's only a matter. We're a hop, skip, and a jump away from CO2.
We can't even get past R32 yet. So
I know I'm over here on CO2 already, and we can't even get R32 in the door. Oh, so comm issues, break it down. It's KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, right? Go through the process of elimination. Remove your centralized controller. Remember, if my U4 is on my indoor units, it has nothing to do with a centralized controller. So process of elimination, let me get rid of all the things I don't need. Let me disconnect the BMS system. Let me disconnect all the other intricate controls. And let me just troubleshoot one-to-one what the problem is. This condenser to this indoor unit. And you'll find sometimes by disconnecting it from the centralized controller and from that system or multiple systems that the U4s you're getting all throughout the building is only centralized to one system, but it's actually crashing the entire comm network for all units. So,
yeah. Before we close out, how about a quick exercise? Because we didn't touch on this. How is it wired?
this is a good one.
All right. So I got a
Solid
looks like
core
I got
8 wire.
heat recovery outdoor unit. I got 2 branch selectors and I got 4 indoors. How would we start wiring this?
This is a trick question. I'm going to fail this one. No, outdoor unit F1, F2 in goes to the BS boxes. We daisy chain together between outdoor unit and the first BS box. We don't do star communication, right? This is not a
So we
Christmas
can't
tree.
We're not doing this, right? We're not
No,
coming
we're not.
overhead.
We're not
No.
connecting halfway through with
All
some
right.
wire nuts. We're coming back off the same terminals, moving over. Man, I love Vizio. And we move over to our other BS box and make our connection. So you're going to notice on the BS box, especially for multi-port and also the pass-through boxes that we have, that there is a F1, F2 in, outdoor, it says, and
Sure.
then there's F1, F2 BS
BS
box.
unit.
So the outdoor is just what we call the F1, F2 in, and then the BS unit is just your leaving. So they don't want you landing them on the same terminals because we really suck at landing wires under the same terminal correctly. So they just took it away altogether, and they took the jumper that comes off the board. And so what you do is from your outdoor unit on your first BS box, it goes to the outdoor terminal on F1, F2. Then going from that BS box to your other BS box, you're going to go on the BS box unit
Yes.
out from BS box 1 to then your outdoor terminal BS on your BS box number 2. It's not confusing at all, right?
But but aren't they the same line?
They are the same line, but they want it to pass through the microprocessor on the
Yeah.
BS box board to gather the information that's needed without skipping over the box. Because
Interesting.
remember, information of data packets that are being sent from the outdoor unit have a specific address for it. It's no different than IP addresses when you send stuff over the internet and it's going to a specific location. It sorts that information to say, is this my address? Nope, just keep passing the information along, right? This isn't me. Keep going. And
So
so that's why wiring is critical.
if you were to just put the wires on the same terminal in the first box, what do you think would happen?
So you may not get a communication error right away, but what's going to happen is the information gets mixed up over time and you start to get indoor units that stop communicating. You start getting data packets that don't get sent to the right space. You'll find that indoor units jump in and jump out of communication. You find units that go into restart standby a lot. You find units that go into restart standby way too many times to actually give any kind of capacity. It's just a nightmare, right? And it may not be a problem right now. I've seen outdoor units connected together, twin modules on F1, F2 outs, and they run. They don't run well because they think they're by themselves.
Right.
Do what you're supposed to, and you won't have problems. Have you checked the wiring to make sure it's on the right terminals? So then
Yep.
let's keep going. BS boxes.
Yeah. What do you do
Right?
from your BS box? I'm gonna move
Every
one.
BS box is supposed to go from the individualized port to the other indoor units. So we've got A, B, C, D, right? We're going through the alphabet here. So if you guys didn't go to elementary school, you get to have that lesson now with BS boxes. Port A, port B, port C, right? So on and so forth, all the way down the letter chain there.
But
They
but
get
do I just jump in like this? Do I just take
no.
another wire from there? No.
So your comm loop from your outdoor units to your BS boxes is 16.5 volts DC. Then the information that passes through the microprocessor on the BS board then takes that information and puts it on a separate communication circuit to those indoor units. So a nice new fresh 16.5 volt DC signal separate from the main comm loop gets only information pertinent to that indoor unit sent to it on that comm wire, right? And so that's where we end up communicating to our indoor units. They don't go on the F1, F2 circuit to the outdoor unit. They go on their own individualized port to that unit for port 1, port 2, port 3, port 4, and that's the A, B, C, D, right? And those are supposed to also have 16.5 volts DC, which can be extremely confusing at times. So
Okay. So if everything is correct, I should have no communication issues here, huh?
that's it. Well, if you've set the dip switches on that BS box
Oh,
for
right.
the associated units.
Right. Dip
And
switches.
remember, not every box has 2 ports or 3 ports. They don't make a 3 port. They don't make a 5 port. It's a 6 port. It's a 4 port, right?
1, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Yes. And
More
so
12s.
if you're not using those ports, you're supposed to disable them. Or if you've got an indoor unit that has combined ports together, you also have to set that dip switch as well.
Yep.
So
Just one more thing before we wrap up. One of the calls that we had this week that was kind of throwing my counterpart off was that exact situation. The 6-port branch selector box has 2 branch selector boards in it. Each branch selector board is capable of 4 indoor units.
Yep.
So we don't have 2 ports
Nope.
automatically.
Yep.
So turn those dip switches back on or turn them off, right? Those 2 units aren't there. We're getting UA53s for units that are a COM port that's looking for something that's physically not there.
Yeah, because that's the thing. All it knows is that you're saying, look for a unit on that port.
Yep.
And if it sees nothing, you're going to get an error code because it thinks there's a communication problem. Power's off to the unit. I'm sending information. I'm not getting an address signal back. I'm not getting information back.
Yep.
That's a lot of these things. Setting the dip switches, setting the rotary dials. We're talking about Mitsubishi and sequential addresses. It's the same thing. If you don't set the right address or you set a duplicate address, it becomes a problem. So,
Right. So, all right, man. Well, good talk. We'll see you later.
yeah. All right. Wrapping it up. Talk to you later,
Yeah.
man. See you next one.